This is another episode of Duval Against Y'all. I'm your host, Zach. You know the deal. Follow me on Twitter at blind_side_73. Um, this is the start of a weekly show. I'm going to be talking about what went wrong for the Jaguars this year. Which since obviously after losing to the Tennessee Titans, we lost our AFC South. The Houston Texans were able to take the division, and fortunately, that loss also knocked us out of the playoffs. Well, some news has already been done with, for example, some of the defensive coaches have already been fired, and some other issues. I'll probably get into them on a future video, but on this one, I'm going to start off with what I believe was the beginning of the issues that we had. That we should have seen when the season first started, but of course, we all believed our hype. We thought this wasn't going to be a new year. This isn't as bad as 2018, I feel like, just because obviously same situation, didn't make the playoffs after having a decent playoff run the year before. This year, at least we didn't completely fall on our face. We had we had more wins, which we're kind of in no man's land with the draft now. If I remember right, we actually have the 17th overall pick, if I remember right. So that's hopefully, I feel like we should try to trade up. I mean, I know we have a lot of picks locked into with the Calvin Ridley situation, but I feel like that's what we're going to need to. But again, I'll talk in future video. I'll think about what we should do. But for now, I'm going to start off with what I believe started this entire year for us not being great, and that was our offseason issues. So by offseason issues, I mean everything from who we did and did not go sign in free agency and the draft. So I'm gonna start off with free agency. Obviously, we didn't do a lot with free agency. Just really the biggest thing was what we did at the trade deadline last year, and that was the Calvin Ridley situation, trading for him. And so we kind of didn't sat on our toes, which personally I feel like that's always a bad idea if you don't actively trying to get better. I know a lot of the talk is we're trying to get Trevor's deal done. I feel like we need to wait on Trevor's deal. Not that I don't feel like he's going to be worth it, but I was like, we have his 5th year, and then at minimum we have 2 franchise tags before it actually hurts. So I feel like we should have been trying to spend the money so we could win when he was on his rookie deal, but that just seemed to not be the plan. There were some moves that were good, like the Anton Harrison drafting him, which a lot of us, myself included, did not think he would be that great. Versus Jawan Taylor, that was a good move. It saved the money. Jawan Taylor actually didn't have a great year, which he never was that great for us. He was okay. He's called for more penalties, just like he always has been. I think the Chiefs kind of just panicked a little bit to get him, which, of course, yeah, he's in the play. His team's better, but the trade wasn't. So that trade-off seems to be okay. Another issue, which we all banged on the table, the 2 issues we all said all year that we need to go get, and we didn't do much of either, was go get a guard for the offensive line and then go get another pass rusher. We brought in Yannick Ngakoue, Calais Campbell, Javion Clowney off of visits. None of them got left for contracts. Both Ngakoue and Calais, I feel like Calais 100% went for the money with Atlanta. He could say he thought he was going to do good. That's okay. And Ngakoue wanted to be a starter, which his issue, which we would not promise him, but he ended up taking a small deal with Chicago for a year. So I feel like we could have talked to him about that. I feel like it would have helped his sack numbers a lot, which obviously his sack numbers were down in Chicago, but he got hurt. So that's a little flawed for that. Clowney, on the other hand, he had a great year with the Ravens. He probably wouldn't have done as much just because with Trayvon Walker situation. I still feel like Trayvon, we should put him. Who had a good year. I mean, he doubled his sacks. There's nothing to sneeze at. in his second year. But I feel like we should have that needed to be fixed. There was always Jason Pierre-Paul was always out there for majority of the year. Just Houston was out there. Melvin Gordon was out there, or Melvin Ingram, not Melvin Gordon. We had options, and we chose not to do that. Not sure what Balky was thinking. I think like that's part of the reason why the defense wasn't as good. Didn't feel like Mercado kind of had to blitz if Josh Allen or Walker weren't getting there. He needed to blitz because he had no one else. So that was always the thing. Another issue, we all said go get Dalton Reisner. Never did. Minnesota ends up getting him, and then we end up trading for Ezra Cleveland. And then so we could have had our draft pick and probably around the same amount of money for 1 year for Dalton Reisner because he wasn't making that much. But again, we sat on our hands, waited too long, and then realized that our guard was an issue. I know, and I was part of this. I thought Walter Little was our better left tackle after the year went on. Cam's obviously the better left tackle. And Walter Little is not a good guard, so Walter Little's only a tackle. I feel like that's kind of what we had to do. Well, Cam probably gets beat with speed guys better than Walter. Walter's the opposite. He can handle a speed guy, but the strong guys push him back. And then, of course, that led to one of Trevor's injuries, which, again, we can't protect him. That was an issue. And then with the guard play, it was getting up the middle all the time because Luke Fortner's not hit. He has to go after this year. Brandon Sheriff's getting old, so we need another guard on that side too, on the right side. But I feel like Fortner was probably the one, especially once everybody went down, and having to like reshuffle the line. Tyler Shatney, he's a good backup, but starting, he's just not it. He's just not that guy. But so we knew, and I feel like we just kind of sat on our hands and that blew up on our faces. Same thing with the pass rush. We assumed that DeJuan Smoot was going to be 100% instantly, which when Susie came back, which was not it. Then Chason, we know what Kavion Chason is. Yeah, he set his career high this year with 3 sacks, 2 sacks. That's not good enough. He's not first one. Everyone knew we liked his special teams. That was the only reason why he was still on the team. But at the same end, though, we had guys that we need to see what they had pass rushing, and that just didn't get it done. We needed another guy in case, because that was what I was like. I feel like in case Chason didn't turn out, we needed a backup who could do what needs to step up. But unfortunately, we didn't do that. We went on DeJuan Smoot, who just isn't that great. So that was also an issue. And then, of course, one of these we didn't. But then re-signing or extending Will Robinson-Harris and Devon Hamilton also blew up in our faces. Neither of those guys. Will Robinson-Harris kind of turns on late in the year, so I'll give him a little pass, but he's still not consistent enough. And personally, I feel like we overpaid him to do what he was supposed to. We were already overplaying Foley Fatukasi. And then we just expanded on it by doing him and Devon Hamilton. It was too much. And then Devon Hamilton, who looked like he was going to explode this year, will admit, we all thought he was going to be that in the offseason, but unfortunately he got hurt and then with that undisclosed and then turned to the back edge shoe. And then he was never the same. And then we kept pushing him out there. And then he got benched for a couple games, then came back out there. Feel like we shouldn't have re-signed him. That was an offseason issue. We needed bigger guys. That was always things like it's kind of weak on both trenches, which ended up hurting us. Especially this last game when none of the D linemen were stopping anybody. I feel like that was just we knew it was coming. Especially then after last year with Foley's not really doing what we thought. We probably should have had someone prepared to take over, but didn't end up happening. I feel like we kind of went in this offseason, we were all went, oh, offense, instead of worrying about the most important thing of any team is then that's the offense defensive lines. We could have had a great and a pass rush, especially with we could have had Danielle Hunter from the Vikings. Because but Baltimore hold up to his draft picks, which these late picks, what's the point? We want a player who can reach the already established players level. Let's get the guy that's already established. I mean, because that would have been in a great D line or a great edge rush route, because we could have put Walker, who is probably, if not the one of our best run stoppers, put him at D end, and then have Danielle Hunter and Josh Allen on the outside. That's a great pass rush, and it fixes the internal issue. But of course, hindsight's 2020. But that's something I feel like we should have done to fix it. And then, of course, there was our draft. Like I already spoke about Anton Harrison. Okay, he was good. Especially as the year went on, he wasn't great early, but as the year went on, he became a really good pass rusher or pass blocker. He's a little more help run blocking, but like that's going to come with time. So that pick I don't have a problem with. But almost every other pick, even the pick that I called, and you can check my timeline. I called that we are going to go get Tank Bigsby in the third. We ended up getting him in third. So that was always it. But like just going down the draft. Brenton Strange didn't do anything this year. He was too high of a draft pick. He drafted him too high anyway. We could have got him in the later rounds. He kind of just did. I don't really remember any great plays for him. I don't remember any bad, or I remember a few bad plays like with his holding calls, or I mean, Luke Farrell pretty much was taking his spot. He wasn't going to start over Evan Ingram anyway, so I feel like it was kind of a waste of a pick just because what's the point? I mean, because Ingram was on a 3-year deal. So by the time Ingram's deal's done, Brenton Strange has 1 year and then he's going to have to get paid. It was just a whole mess up. I know Doug Pearson really wanted him. So that's why we drafted him. But I feel like even if he wanted him, he wasn't going to get passed. He's probably going to be like a third, fourth round pick at earliest. We could have picked somebody else, like Sam Laporta or Tank Dell even. Which again, that was all CJ Stroud down Houston. We could have had, and then we could have had another receiver. Would have been great. Really would have helped out Kirk, especially and Ridley, especially once Zay Jones went down. But that was just, I feel like it would end up being worse of a pick. And then we have Tank Bigsby, who was terrible 90% of the year. The last 2 games, he kind of showed up a little bit. But I mean, the Indianapolis, the fumbles, again, the two are technically the fumble against Indianapolis, and then you had the interception against Indianapolis that went on Trevor, but technically that should have been Tank because that ball hit Tank in the hands. He dropped it, popped up, interception. I feel like we need to have another category for plays like that, like in the stat sheet, because it makes their quarterback's numbers look worse when you hit guy in the hand that bounces up in the air, but we'll see on that. Of course, that's just my 2 cents on it. And then of course there's also the fumble against Pittsburgh. Dearness Johnson pretty much was taking a spot to the end of the year. Then the end of the year, we try to get Tank a little more, get his confidence back up. But Dearness Johnson was the better number 2 back. Which again, there's another issue with the offensive line not being good. None of the running backs had great yards per carry. ETN, the last game of the year, went over 1,000, which great job for ETN because I don't know how he did it. But Tank was supposed to be like the power back, like the Thunder to ETN's Lightning. Didn't end up working out that way. Part of it, I feel like we didn't run the ball enough early in some games, but still wasn't good enough. Ventrell Miller, which, again, we didn't need another linebacker. We already had Devin Lloyd, Foy Luricon, Chad Muma, Shaquille Quarterman, Caleb Johnson. It wasn't linebacker, especially interior inside the backer, wasn't really on our list. We shouldn't have drafted him. Even as a Florida fan, I felt like he was kind of like, okay. because even if one of the linebackers went down, say if Devin Lloyd went down, we'd have Chad Muma who could take a spot. I just don't see the point of double dipping again at the linebacker position. We had enough linebackers in the draft. I feel like we could have got somebody else. That like an offensive lineman, because we didn't end up. Antonio Harrison was the only one of the 2 offensive linemen we drafted. We could have drafted like 3, and line would have been set. But so Venture Miller ended up not playing this year because he got hurt again, which is his issue in college. He was always getting hurt. So kind of disappointing pick. Another one, Tyler Lacey. Well, he was moving inside and swelling up and becoming a bigger player. So I feel like that helped a little bit. But again, expecting a 5th-round pick to come in and be your best interior D lineman pass rusher, another one to be like a DeJuan Smoot 2.0 or something, it was just too much. But again, he was a lower pick, so I'm not really too mad. But then we have Yasir Abdullah. Yasir Abdullah, I feel like what could be really good. I feel like he should have gotten to play time over Smoot or Chason or somebody. Because when he was playing early, when DeJuan Smoot was hurt, he was getting more pressures. He didn't get sacks, but he was getting pressures and hurries more than Chason was. So I feel like we should have at least given him a little more playing time. But again, I guess this is going to be chopped up to the next year thing. But if he's going to be on the team, what's the point of having a player like that? That just hurt us. Antonio Johnson, when he finally got on the field later after he got hurt, great. He was a good pick. That one was a great pick. That was a good pick for him, especially because I feel like Rashad Jenkins and maybe Dewey, probably not just because Dewey's effect on special teams, but Rashad Jenkins probably gone. So Antonio Johnson's probably going to be the starter in either the slot or at safety next year. So that was a fine pick. I wasn't even looking back 2020. That was a great pick. Parker Washington, I think we'll find out more this coming year just because he's probably going to be Jamal Agnew's replacement. Jamal Agnew's probably gone. And then Christian Braswell ended up on IR. Eric Hallett was on the practice. Cooper Hodges, who may be our savior but again, late pick. We're going to hope he's a savior for the offensive line. Next year, it's a bad mix. And then our last 2 picks with Ramon Voschek and Derek Parrish didn't really play, didn't make the teams. Either one, they both were cut. Derek Parrish was supposed to be a fullback, but he always played defensive end, so I don't know. That whole thing should have been something else. But again, there were opportunities for us that we could have drafted. Yes, hindsight is 2020, but we could have drafted better players that would have helped us. But all these safeties and DBs, there's way too many of them. We were drafted, especially with Gregor Jr. coming and back up. Buster Brown, especially the previous year, we had just drafted like 3 or 4 DBs. We should have done offensive line. But that's an issue. That's why I feel like Trent Baalke probably should end up being gone too. I don't think Khan will. Because Khan is known for his half measures. We all know this. If he doesn't fire the people, they just get fired. It's like, oh, we'll fire this and this and this, and then eventually fire everybody like a year or 2 late. But that's affecting us. But that was the offseason issues that I feel like arose. Make sure to like and subscribe. Next time I'm going to talk about our offensive issues, what caused all that. Hopefully, I might, unless there's some more huge news with the defense on the defensive end, I'll do the defense the following episode. But that schedule is not set. I may end up flipping that around again, just due to what news happens. But make sure to just like that. And then there's some new videos that may be coming out soon. So make sure to check all that out. And even though this is the end of the year for us, just always remember it's